Everybody, peace. Welcome to the GSMC College Football Podcast show, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As you guys know, I'm your host, Casuan, and we have got another jam-packed episode with previews and coverage of college football. We've got a lot to talk about today, guys, and I'm excited to have you guys here with me. And I want to get right into it. We're going to be covering Ole Miss, Georgia Tech. We're going to be covering Washington, Michigan State. We're going to be covering Illinois and Penn State. But let's start out with this show with, because it's Wednesday, my way too early Heisman list candidates. Because it's completely objective and unbiased, and this is the only place you will get anything like that when it comes to Heisman lists and when it comes to sports media. So here we go. But before we get into it, guys, if you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button as well. Stay up to date on all of our latest content. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to us on Patreon as well, so you can get access to all of our exclusive content that we post daily. And if you would like to support our network and our company, follow the link in the ticker below, streamelements.com/GSMC Sports Network /tip. Once again, that's streamelements.com/GSMC Sports Network /tip. None of this is possible without you guys, the fans, and we're just so grateful that you guys love enjoying listening to us and tuning in to our shows to hear our analysis and breakdowns on any and every sport. So thank you so much. So that being said, guys, let's get right into it. So Heisman, way too early Heisman list candidates for this week. As you guys know, last week we had Jalen Milroe, Jordan Travis, Shedeursanders, and Caleb Williams rounding it out for our list of way too early Heisman candidates. And we had a lot of action last week, a lot of games, couple of upsets, couple of great performances, couple of poor performances, a lot of stuff that went on during college football last weekend. And with that being said, there are some adjustments that need to be made to our Heisman list. And as you guys know, we are completely unbiased. I'm completely unbiased when it comes to developing this list. I get it approved and checked by the committee members, so it's great. It's a lot, we do a lot when it comes to this. So that being said, let's get into it. As you guys know, we go from 4 to 1. So starting out at number four for our Heisman list. Number 4, we've got Jordan Travis of Florida State. As you guys know, Jordan Travis last week played University of Southern Missouri. Southern Miss. And so he went 15 to 29, 175 yards, 2 touchdowns with a QBR of 69. And listen, I understand that it is Southern Miss, and the reason that that Jordan Travis is on this list is really still based off his performance against LSU. I don't think we understand how dominant his performance was in that game against LSU, and how great he was. And we have to remember that in this game against Southern Miss, Jordan Travis didn't play in the fourth quarter because the game was pretty much wrapped up. They won 66-13. Jordan Travis has ample opportunity to bolster his Heisman chances with his ACC schedule and conference play. And, him having an out-of-conference win against a ranked opponent on a neutral site will play a factor in his in how people vote for him when it comes to the Heisman. And he performed well in the primetime slot. So I have Jordan Travis at number 4 on my list. Okay, coming in at number 3. Alabama fans, I love you guys. Texas fans, you guys are also going to love me for this right here. But I've got Quinn Edwards coming in at number 3. Obviously with his performance against Alabama, where he went 24, 38, 349 yards with 3 touchdowns and 0 interceptions with a QBR of 89.4. Listen, guys, we talked about this yesterday. Quinn Edwards did what no quarterback has been able to do since Joe Burrow in 2019, and that's win in Tuscaloosa. And if history be on Quinn Edwards' side, there are a couple of quarterbacks. The last quarterbacks to win in Tuscaloosa were Joe Burrow, Johnny Manziel, Cam Newton. And one thing that all of these guys have in common is that they all won the Heisman. So, if history be one that repeats itself, that is on Quinn Edwards' side. Once again, Quinn Edwards has an excellent chance to bolster his Heisman chances with his Big 12 schedule conference play against the likes of Oklahoma and Baylor and Oklahoma State and Kansas State. So he has opportunity to play other great ranked opponents and bolster his chances from the Heisman as well. So that's Quinn Edwards coming in at number 3 on our Heisman list. Coming in at number 2, we have Shedeursanders, who last week against Nebraska went 31 of 42 with 393 yards. To go along with 2 touchdowns. And on the season, Shedeur has almost 1,000 yards. He has 903 yards, 6 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, with a total QBR of 83.7, which is good for 13th in the country. Shedeur is someone that we talked about as a potential Heisman candidate since week 1 and his performance against TCU, and he did not let up with his performance against Nebraska. Is Colorado can continue to win and possibly go undefeated or have 1 loss in their schedule by the end of the season, Shedeur will definitely be in New York for the Heisman ceremony as a candidate. And the key right here is Shedeur's consistency and his ability to have great ball control and not turn the ball over. So Shedeursanders at number 2, which means that we have at number 1, rounding out the list, your number 1 Heisman candidate on the way too early Heisman candidate list. Coming in at number 1, same place as he was last week, Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams last week against Stanford won 56-10, went 19 of 21 for 281 yards with 3 touchdowns with a QBR of 98.3. On the season, Caleb Williams has 878 yards, 12 touchdowns, and a QBR of 92.1, which is good for 3rd in the country. As we know, USC has had a light schedule so far with games against San Jose State, Nevada, and, like I said, the aforementioned Stanford, and they got Arizona State coming up on the 23rd, so they have to bye this week. But Caleb Williams is still number 1 on my list so far as the way too early Heisman candidate. On the way too early Heisman candidate list, and Caleb Williams has been playing to the expectations that everyone has had for him so far coming into the season. And like I said last week, if Caleb Williams wins the Heisman this season, is he now considered the greatest college football quarterback of all time? And I want to know what you guys think about that. Leave your comments in the chat below and comment as well. Let me know what you guys think. If Caleb Williams wins the Heisman this season, will he be considered the greatest college football quarterback of all time? I know for me, winning plays a big factor in accolades like that or in recognition like that. So he would have to at least make the college football playoff and, quite frankly, at least make the national championship. It's just hard to consider a quarterback the greatest college football quarterback of all time, but they don't have a national championship on their resume. Or even, quite frankly, a conference championship on their resume. We remember USC lost to Utah last year. in the conference championship game. But that's where I'm at right now with my Heisman list. Let me know what you guys think, though. Who's your top 4 candidates in what order for the way too early Heisman list? I'd love to hear about it. But guys, coming up in our next segment, we are going to provide a preview for the number 7 ranked Penn State Nittany Lions going against the Fighting Illini. Going to have great coverage for that in our next segment, guys. So be sure to stick around. You are not going to miss it. All right, Brian, welcome back. In case you missed our first segment, we gave coverage on our way too early Heisman candidate list. I had Jordan Travis in at number 4. I had Quint Edwards in at number 3 based off his dominating performance against Alabama, unfortunately. And then I had Shedeursanders at number 2. And then I had Caleb Williams at number 1. But I want to know what you guys think, though. Write in the comment section who you guys think is the front runner for the Heisman Trophy winner right now. And let me know what you guys think about my list and what changes you think I should make to the list, if any. And stick around, guys, for the final segment of our show. Final 2 segments where we cover some of the top games of the week. We're going to be covering Ole Miss and Georgia Tech to go along with Washington and Michigan State. So, a lot of cover for you guys, but we're going to get into it right now. Let's cover a Big Ten matchup that we have between Penn State and Illinois. Now listen, I know if we look at ESPN Predictor right now, it'll say that Penn State has an 86.5% chance of winning. But the game will be played in Memorial Stadium at University of Illinois, so it's a road game for Penn State. But if we look a little deeper into this, we look and we see at the stats for Penn State. They're currently averaging 279 passing yards per game, which is good for 41st in the country. But they are averaging 230 yards on the ground, which is tied for 15th in the country. And they're giving up 11 points a game, which is good for 17th in the country. And they're averaging 50 points a game, which is good for 9th in the country. So this is a Penn State team who no surprise to us, they have relied heavily on the run game so far. They've got wins against Delaware where they won 63-7 convincingly, and they also had another convincing win against West Virginia, where they won 38-15. And Penn State has re-upped. They've got a couple of returning players, and they've got quite a bit of experience, especially on the offensive side. Though they're led by sophomore Drew Aller, but Drew Aller has played, for all intents and purposes, he's played quite well over the course, throughout these two games. He's thrown for 529 yards and 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, with a QBR of 183. So he's played quite well. He's shown control of the offense, good poise on the pressure in the pocket. But the rushing attack led by Nicholas Singleton, who currently has 117 yards on the season, but he also has 4 touchdowns. Katron Allen also has 54 yards on the ground and a touchdown. And Tank Smith has 2 not Tank Smith. Babe Pabula has 2 touchdowns on the season as well. So, this is the Penn State team that likes to do running back by committee, and that's because though Drew Aller is a sophomore, they like to rely heavily on the run game. They don't put Drew in too many situations where he has to make a lot of reads or difficult reads. And they're going up against an Illinois team that that is currently allowing 31 points per game and allowing 153 rushing yards per game, which are good for 106 and 74th respectively. So this is an Illinois team that struggles to defend the run. They lost the game. They lost their first game of the season. Their second game of the season against Kansas, 34-23. And they do have a close win against Toledo though that opened to start them out in the season. Illinois is another team that has there's quite young at the quarterback position, led by Lou Altimer, who is a sophomore. But I just wanted to cover this game because this game is going to speak more about what Penn State is going to be. What Penn State is going to be. Shout out to Kenneth, by the way, for just subscribing to us. Thanks, Kenneth, man. You're the man. By the way, guys, if you haven't already, be sure to check out the GSMC Baseball Podcast as well. Kenneth provides great insight on that. But yeah, Penn State is going to be a team that relies heavily on the run, and if Penn State can perform well against Illinois, it will bode well as a tune-up game for when they get into their tougher conference opponents, i.e. Michigan State and obviously Ohio State and Michigan. But this would be a huge game for Penn State to allow Drew Aller to kind of get comfortable with making reads in the pocket, and I don't think this game is going to be particularly close. I do think that Penn State is going to do a good job of controlling the clock and controlling the ball because they rely so heavily on the run. And I have Penn State winning this game by a score of 32-10. I just don't think Illinois will be able to get much offensive movement, seeing that they have struggled as well to put points up on the board. And they're going up against a really good defensive team as well, like we said, in Penn State. But it's something that's so interesting about Penn State is that they have shown, time and time again in the course of the season that they fail to win the big games in the Big Ten. How many times have we talked about Penn State, losing to Michigan or losing to Michigan State or losing to Iowa, i.e. in like 2018 when they were ranked top 4 in the country, losing to Iowa at home. And will Penn State ever be able to break that barrier and beat the Michigan and beat the Ohio State, in the same year? Yes, they have great wins against all three, Michigan, Ohio State, and Michigan State, and throughout the course of the past 5 years. But being able to do it consecutively will be key for them. And the committee has shown that whoever can win the Big Ten is for all intents and purposes in the college football playoff. So this will be an interesting matchup. This will be an interesting race in the Big Ten, because I haven't seen much out of Ohio State yet. It tells me that they have separated themselves from Penn State and that they're the number one threat to Michigan for the Big Ten. So will Penn State be able to show that they are the number one threat instead of Ohio State to Michigan for the Big Ten championship? And that would be the big thing to see looking forward. But let me know what you guys think. Who do you think is the biggest threat to Michigan in the Big Ten right now? Is it Penn State? Is it Ohio State? Let me know what you guys think. Yeah. So guys, that's all we have for this preview for Penn State and Illinois. In our next segment, we're going to be covering Washington and Michigan State. So let me know what you guys think. Who's the biggest threat to Michigan in the Big Ten? And we will be right back, so stick around. All right, welcome back. In case you missed our first two segments, we covered the way too early Heisman candidate list, and then we also covered a preview for Penn State and Illinois. And one thing about that Heisman list, guys, I know that probably gonna get a lot of flack for having Jordan Travis still on that list at number 4, but we have to understand this, guys. His performance against LSU in Week 1 was so dominant, and not only was it dominant, but it occurred in a primetime game, primetime CV slot, and that accounts for something. The same way that we talk about Quinn Ewers' performance against Alabama, we have to talk like that with Jordan Travis and his performance, because people are kind of saying the same thing now about Alabama and LSU, that Alabama's maybe not as good as we thought they were, and their defense isn't as dominant, and the secondary struggled. But we talked about that game in our recap, where it wasn't necessarily the secondary that struggled, because they played quite well going into the third quarter, but it was the offense's inability to sustain long drives. It's now the defense starts to get fatigued and get tired quickly, and now they're not as crisp on their coverages, whether it be man or zone. And you saw that with Texas when they beat Alabama with the deep ball, because their DBs were tired. But same thing with LSU. People are saying that, well, maybe they're not as good as they thought they were, especially on the defensive end. They look slow and sluggish, and they look undersized. So I have no problem still having Jordan Travis at number 4. Stuck Quinn Ewers at 3, based off his performance against Alabama. Shedeursanders at 2, and Caleb Williams still up there at number 1. So let me know what you guys think though about that Heisman list. Am I wrong? What's your list? Who's your Heisman front runner right now? But guys, in this segment, we're going to be covering the matchup between Ole Miss and Georgia Tech. Sorry, not Ole Miss and Georgia Tech, but Washington and Michigan State. Oh, sorry about that, guys. Yeah, we're going to be covering Washington and Michigan State. And if you haven't already, though, guys, be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button as well, so you can stay up to date on all of our latest content. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to us on Patreon as well, so you can get access to all of our exclusive content that we post daily. And if you would like to support our company and our network, just follow the link in the ticker below. It's streamelements.com/GSMC/tip. Once again, that's streamelements.com/GSMC Sports Network /tip. None of this is possible without you guys, the fans. So we're just so grateful for everything you guys do, and just tuning into our show and listening to our insight. And if you haven't already, be sure to check out the GSMC Baseball Podcast, the GSMC the GSMC Basketball Podcast, the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast, and the GSMC NFL Podcast as well. All of our hosts provide great insight, great analysis. My coworkers, my co-hosts are some of the best media reporters in the the business, in the media sports world. And listen, you're not going to get any better insight, any better analysis on any sport than by listening to them. They are the best in the business, so I'm grateful to be working with them. But with that being said, guys, let's get right into it. Washington, number 8 ranked Washington, going up against Michigan State, playing in Spartan Stadium, which is always a difficult place to play, no matter how good Michigan State is that year. Currently, if we look up matchup predictor, Washington has a 66% chance of winning currently. The over-under is currently at 55.5, and the spread is Washington minus 16. So Vegas obviously doesn't think that this game is going to be particularly close. But let's look at the tail of the tape. Let's look at what Washington's bringing to the table and what Michigan State's bringing to the table as well. As you guys know, Washington has wins against Boise State, where they won 56-19. There's also a win against Tulsa, where they won 43-10. Their quarterback, Michael Penix Jr., currently has 859 passing yards on the season with 8 touchdowns with a QBR of 93. Their rushing leader, Will Nix, has 78 yards on 12 carries, and their leading receiver, Rome Adunza, has 239 yards on 2 touchdowns. And as you guys know, Washington is averaging 472 passing yards per game, which is good for number one. They're the best passing attack in the country. However, they only average 93.5 rushing yards per game, which is good, which is tied for 114th in the country. They average almost 50 points a game, which is good for 11th in the country, and they give up 14 points per game, which is tied for 31st. So this is modern day air raid. This is a team that relies heavily on the passing attack. I just read off the stats to you, and there's their averages on the season. This is going up against a Michigan team that has wins against Central Michigan, where they won 31-7, and a win against University of Richmond, where they won 45-14. This is also a Spartan team that is only allowing 10 points per game, which is good for 16th in the country. They're also averaging 38 points per game, which is tied for 36th in the country. So no surprise here that the Michigan State team that relies heavily on the defensive side of the ball, and this is Michigan State team that they only have 1 interception on the season. They're giving up, if I'm not mistaken, about 200 yards passing on average, which isn't particularly too bad. However, like we saw, this is going up against a Washington team that is the best passing attack in the country, with almost 500 yards per game. And the key for Michigan State will be their secondary, and how will they be able to perform, led by senior Jacoby Windman and Charles Brantley and Sean Brown and Caleb Coley and Craig Crump. How will the secondary be able to perform? This is a Michigan State team that runs a lot of zone coverage, so that kind of bodes well for them, seeing that Washington likes to throw the deep ball a lot, takes a lot of pressure off of the DBs to have to play man coverage for the entirety of the game. So will that bode well for them? And where Michigan will struggle though is, and not necessarily struggle, but will they be able to provide enough offense to support their defense? Will the offense for Michigan State be able to sustain enough long drives to give their defense rest, especially their secondary? And will the front seven of Michigan State be able to generate enough pressure on the Washington State front line? This is a Washington State team that has allowed, if I'm not mistaken, they've only allowed 2 sacks on the season. If I'm wrong about that stat, someone let me know. But I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Washington has only allowed 2 sacks on the season. And this is a stout O-line for Washington. And if the Michigan State front seven, specifically their D-line, can generate enough pressure, it takes a lot of pressure off the secondary. And this is a Washington State team that likes to throw the deep ball, so it takes a long time for their plays to develop, which means that the offensive line have to block longer. So you're going to provide Michigan State opportunities to provide pressure, and if Michigan State can provide pressure, and they can, generate enough sacks or, take pressure off the secondary, then, it'll bode well for them. And if the offense can I'll say this, if Michigan State's offense can score at least 24 points, now we're talking about this being a close game and possibly Michigan State pulling off the upset. And, I won't be surprised if Michigan State is able to pull off this upset. But, as of right now, I am going to go with Washington, with Washington Huskies, just because their offense is non-real and it's been so dominant and it's been so impressive over the course of these first two games, and I'm not ready to pick against them yet. So as of right now, I do believe this game will be close. So right now I have Washington winning this game by a score of 32-24, and I say close. I mean at least one possession. I just don't think Michigan State's offense will have enough to keep up with Washington. But it'll be a great game to watch. It's a 5:00 game. It's gonna be streamed on Peacock, and it'll definitely be worth the watch. Absolutely. But guys, that's our preview, and that is our coverage for Washington and Michigan State. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Let me know what you guys think in the chat room. Who do you guys think is going to win this matchup between Washington and Michigan State? And what do you think is going to be the biggest factor, the biggest key for each team's success in this game? I'd love to hear about it. Let me know what you guys think. But guys, in our last segment of the show today, we are going to cover Ole Miss and Georgia Tech. Another highly powered offensive team in Ole Miss, going up against the ACC opponent in Georgia Tech. But guys, we're going to provide all of that coverage for you guys and then some. So guys, be sure to stick around. You are not going to miss it. All right, everybody, welcome back. In case you missed our previous segments, we covered my way too early Heisman list for this week. I still have Caleb Williams at number 1 and Shedeursanders at number 2. Biggest difference, though, for this week compared to last week is we've got Quinn Edwards in at number 3 based off of his dominating performance against Alabama. And I've also got Jordan Travis still on the list, but he's been bumped down to number 4. But let me know what you guys think. Who is your Heisman front runner right now? What do you think about my list, and would you make any changes to it? And we also provided coverage and a preview for the Penn State-Illinois matchup to go along with the Washington and Michigan State matchup. And, I discussed why I think that matchup between Washington and Michigan State is going to be a lot closer than what people expect. And if Michigan State can score at least 24 points, they have a great chance of winning the game. But I just don't think that they're going to have enough offensive firepower to contend with Washington. I mean, we're talking about a Washington team that, like we said, is leading the nation in passing yards. But, guys, speaking of highly powered offenses and coaches that are offensive gurus, let's talk about Ole Miss and Georgia Tech. Lane Kiffin coaching at Ole Miss, one of the best offensive minds in the games. Let's give a breakdown and coverage of that. Before we get into it though, guys, if you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button as well, so you can stay up to date on all of our latest content. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to us on Patreon as well, so you can get access to exclusive content that we post on a daily basis. And if you'd like to support our network and our company, follow the link in the ticker below. It's streamelements.com/GSMC Sports Network /tip. Once again, that's streamelements.com/GSMC Sports Network /tip. None of this is possible without you guys, the fans. So we're just so grateful for all of the support that you give us, and for trusting us with your sporting news and sporting analysis. And it's an honor to be able to provide you guys coverage and to share my thoughts with you guys. So, once again, thank you so much. But with that being said, let's go ahead and get right into it, guys. So if we look at matchup predictor, Ole Miss has a 90.2% chance of winning this game. If we look at the tail of the tape, total yards, Ole Miss is averaging 515 yards, and Georgia Tech is averaging 533 yards. Georgia Tech is averaging 311 passing yards per game, while Ole Miss is averaging 399 passing yards per game. And Georgia Tech's run attack has been non-pareil with 221 rushing yards per game, compared to Ole Miss, who's averaging 116 passing yards per game. However, Georgia Tech is allowing 382 total yards per game, while Ole Miss is allowing 288 yards per game. As you guys know, Georgia Tech suffered a very close defeat against Louisville in the season opener, and they had a dominant performance against South Carolina State, while Ole Miss opened up the season with a 73-7 win against Mercer and a 37-20 victory over Tulane, which was actually a bit closer than what the score may say. But why do I want to cover this Ole Miss and Georgia Tech game? No offense to Georgia Tech at all. They are obviously seeing that they're a great offensive team based on what the stats would show. One of the best rushing attacks in the country. However, I actually want to cover this Ole Miss game, and kind of use it as a framing device for what Alabama can expect to see from them when they play each other. Quite frankly, will Ole Miss be able to establish the run? Will Ole Miss be able to establish the run against Georgia Tech, and will they be able to not have to rely heavily on their passing game. And that's going to be Ole Miss's key to success, not just in this game, but in the season as well. What you see so often is that a lot of teams don't respect Ole Miss's running attack, so they're comfortable with bringing in the extra DB to assist in coverage, knowing that they can apply pressure with just 3 down linemen or 3 linebackers. They're perfectly comfortable with that because they don't fear the run. And if Ole Miss can establish the run, it'll keep the defenses more honest, specifically Georgia Tech and Alabama when they do go up against them. And this will be a good test for Ole Miss to see if they can do that against the Georgia Tech defensive line and front seven that particularly doesn't do a good job of generating pressure. So if Ole Miss can do that against this game, it gives them a lot of momentum going into next week and the week after that when they go up against Alabama. And that will be the key for them. I do have Ole Miss winning this game, by the way, by a score of 37-17. Like I said, don't see this game being particularly close. Georgia Tech will be able to. And by the way, Ole Miss's defense, by the way, if you watch the game against Tulane, very akin to the concept of a bend don't break concept. Another team that might give up quite a bit of passing yards or total yards in general, but they managed to always prevent the team from or limiting them to just field goals. So that bend don't break concept is very real. It's talked about a lot in college football, but more so in the NFL. But it's very real in college, and Ole Miss is a team that will defensively. They, like I said, they bend don't break. They might give up a lot of the yards, but they won't necessarily give up a lot of points. So if Ole Miss can be able to sustain long drives, keep their defense off the field, but most importantly, establish the run and commit to the run early and often, it'll set them up for play action throws deep down the field, which is really what they want to get to with the Lane Kiffin offense. With Lane Kiffin offenses, they like to attack laterally, sideline to sideline, and then they like to get vertical, because the lateral movement, the lateral attacks, keeps the defense honest, but also spreads them. And then when the defense is spread, then it's easier to go for the deep ball, easier to get vertical on the defense once they get lateral. And that's what Ole Miss wants to do. And if Ole Miss is able to do that against Georgia Tech, it'll give them a lot of momentum moving forward into the next game. So I really want to use this Ole Miss Georgia Tech game, as a framing device for what Ole Miss can do moving forward against Alabama. But that is my coverage for this game. Like I said, I have Ole Miss winning this game by a score of 37-17. It'll be a 7, anywhere from a 4 to 7 point game going into halftime. But I think Ole Miss is going to have too much firepower. They're going to pull this one out towards the end, particularly in the third quarter is when they'll start to pull away. But let me know what you guys think. What do you guys think is the biggest key to victory for Ole Miss, and what's the biggest key for Georgia Tech pulling off the upset? I'd love to hear what you guys think. Let me know in the chat section, in the comment section as well. Who do you think is going to win this game? And am I wrong? Is my prediction wrong? Am I seeing this code totally wrong? Let me know what you guys think. But guys, that is all we have for our show today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for listening to us. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all of our latest content. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to us on Patreon as well, so you can get exclusive access to content that we post daily and you can't get anywhere else. And if you would like to support our company and our network, just follow the link in the ticker below. It's streamelements.com/GSMC Sports Network /tip. Once again, it's streamelements.com/GSMC Sports Network /tip. None of this is possible without you guys, the fans, and we're just so grateful for all the support and love that you show us. And it's an honor to be able to share my insight and my analysis on the world of college football with you guys. And Thank you so much. And if you haven't already, be sure to check out the GSMC Baseball Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast, and the GSMC NFL Podcast as well. All of our hosts provide great insight on the sports that they cover. They're some of the best in the business when it comes to analyzing and insights and providing coverage, like I said, for the sports that they talk about. And it's an honor to work with them because, like I said, they're some of the best in the business. But guys, we'll be back again same time tomorrow at 7 for all your college football needs. Until then, continue to stay safe, be vigilant, make smart decisions, and until next time, guys, peace.